After 5 years in prison, the first thing Daniel Hayes did upon his release was arrange for a mountain committal. Mr. Hayes, the coordinator said, "This is for the committal service you've requested. Upon your passing, we will transport your body to the Rockies for the ceremony. You'll need to pay a deposit now, with the balance due within 2 weeks." Daniel nodded, pulling a plastic bag from his faded jeans. He carefully counted and recounted the crumpled bills and coins he had painstakingly saved in prison, finally managing to pay the deposit. He had been diagnosed with cancer in prison. It was terminal, and he had been given a month to live. He remembered how years ago, he and Sarah Lockwood had promised to get married in Aspen, letting the majesty of the Rockies bear witness to their undying love. Since that promise could no longer be fulfilled, being laid to rest in that sacred place would have to be his consolation. The committal was expensive. To cover the remaining balance, he left the agency and applied for a server position at the Elysian, a high-end nightclub. With a criminal record, he couldn't find a conventional job, and the Elysian was a notorious playground for New York's elite, where the pay was good. After a brief rundown of his duties, he was handed a uniform and told to start that same night. After a quick orientation, he carried a bottle of champagne into a VIP suite. The room was dimly lit, filled with the city's young and wealthy playing some sort of party game. Daniel kept his head down, crouching by the coffee table to gently set the bottle down. As he was about to leave, a familiar, cool voice drifted from across the room. He froze, his entire body going rigid. Sure enough, there on the main sofa, Sarah Lockwood sat like a queen holding court, her stunning features looking impossibly regal and aloof in the shifting lights. 5 years had passed, but she hadn't aged a day, though she now carried an icy, unapproachable air. Daniel risked another glance, and then saw her nestled against a man. That man was his best friend, Mason Croft. They appeared to be discussing their wedding. "We'll have the ceremony just how you want it, in a chapel on the coast, with the beach covered in pink roses," Mason was saying. "And if you didn't like the gown from the last fitting, I'll have the designer start over. Whatever you want." Hearing Mason's voice, Daniel's mind drifted back. 5 years ago, he had been on the verge of becoming Sarah's husband. They were childhood sweethearts, having grown up together. When Daniel's parents died in an accident, it was Sarah who had helped him through the darkest days. He used to give her rides to school on his bike. She was the one who stood up for him against bullies. She was the one who nursed him back to health when he was sick. They fell in love naturally, their path leading them straight to the altar until the night before their wedding, when he struck and killed Sarah's mother with his car. He could never forget that night, or the sight of Sarah's eyes, bloodshot with grief and rage. She had cornered him like a wild animal, demanding to know why, begging him to tell her there was some hidden reason for what he'd done. Daniel had never felt such despair. He looked up and forced a smile. "There's no reason. She caught me with another woman and threatened to tell you. I lost my temper and ran her down." He would never forget the look in Sarah's eyes. It was a suffocating web of fury, hatred, and disappointment that had ensnared him completely. In the end, it was Sarah herself who had put him behind bars. During those 5 years in prison, he replayed it over and over. If he had just told her the truth, would things between them be different now? But his rational mind always reminded him why he couldn't. Mrs. Lockwood had long suffered from severe depression. On the eve of the wedding, she had a severe episode. In a state of confusion, she mistook one of the family's bodyguards for her husband and slept with him. Daniel had gone to their house to discuss a last-minute wedding detail with Sarah, only to walk in on the scene by accident. When Mrs. Lockwood came to her senses, she was consumed by remorse. She tearfully begged him never to speak of what he saw. Though conflicted, he finally agreed. But he never imagined that as he started his car to leave, she, in a fit of despair, would run out and throw herself directly into its path. Sarah had always been the golden child of the Lockwood family. If a scandal like this were to break, it would be devastating for her and her family's reputation. The high society vultures would tear her apart, perhaps even questioning her legitimacy. So, for Sarah's sake, he had to bear the burden alone and confess to a crime he didn't commit. Now, with his diagnosis, there was no point in ever revealing the truth. If she hated him, it was better to let that hatred burn. It would make his final departure cleaner, with no strings attached. His body trembled as he turned to leave, but a voice from behind suddenly called his name. "Daniel Hayes? You're out." He flinched, not daring to meet the piercing gaze he felt from the main sofa. As he tried to hurry out, someone stuck out a leg, tripping him. Caught completely by surprise, he stumbled into the coffee table and crashed to the floor. Several bottles on the table shattered, and his hand was sliced open in multiple places, blood welling up instantly. The suite filled with roaring laughter as people got to their feet to gawk at his miserable state. Daniel, it really is you, fresh out of prison and already waiting tables. Talk about hitting the ground running. He kept his head bowed, saying nothing, just pressing a hand to his bleeding cuts. The man continued, "What are you spacing out for? You spilled drinks everywhere. Get over here and clean it up." Then he added, "On your knees." Another wave of laughter washed over him. He had no choice but to pull a rag from his apron, get on his knees, and start wiping the spilled liquor from the floor. He didn't look up, but he could feel Sarah's hateful stare fixed on him, cold and sharp. It felt like a blade hanging over his head, poised to strike. She hated him so much. Seeing him humiliated like this must be satisfying for her. He quickly finished cleaning and tried to stand, but the man wasn't finished with him. "Think you can just walk away? That liquor you broke costs a fortune. How are you going to pay for it?" Daniel clenched his fists, unable to look up. "I'm sorry. It was an accident." "An accident? You think sorry covers it? You can't afford to pay it back anyway. So how about this? I'll give you a way out. Crawl between my legs, and we'll forget the whole thing." The man smirked, propping his leg up on a nearby chair and looking down at him with contempt. The crowd roared with laughter, then began to chant in unison. "Crawl, crawl, crawl." Daniel bit his lip, his face burning with shame. Their mocking stares felt like daggers in his back, and there was no way out. He had no money to pay for the damages, and it was obvious this was all for Sarah's benefit, a way for her friends to avenge her. If he refused, they'd just find another way to punish him. After 5 years in prison, his dignity was already worthless. His vision blurred as he bit his lip so hard he nearly drew blood. Finally, in front of everyone, he knelt. Just as he bent over to crawl through the man's legs, the coffee table was violently kicked aside. An ice-cold voice cut through the noise. "That's enough." A sharp pain shot through his arm, and before he could process what was happening, he was being dragged out of the room. In the dim hallway, Sarah slammed him against the wall, her eyes burning with cold hatred. "Daniel, have you no self-respect?" His back hit the cold marble, sending a shiver through him. He turned his head away. "You shouldn't have intervened. How can your mother rest in peace if you show me any kindness?" His words ignited her fury. She shoved him back. "Intervened? Don't flatter yourself. I brought you out here to offer you a deal." She sneered. "You need money, right? Tonight you'll stand guard outside my hotel room door all night. I'll pay you. From now on, you'll be at my beck and call, and I guarantee you'll earn far more than you ever could as a server." Without waiting for an answer, she pulled out a thick wad of cash and slapped it across his face. The impact snapped his head to the side, and the cut on his cheek reopened. He knew this wasn't a job offer. It was revenge, and she made good on her promise. That night, as he stood guard outside her door, he heard her and Mason in bed together. The sounds of a man's grunts and a woman's moans went on, but he just stood there like a zombie, not even realizing that tears were streaming down his face. The sounds continued through the night. At dawn, Sarah finally opened the door and looked at him coldly. "Clean the room." His gaze fell upon the battlefield inside, littered with used condoms. A tremor went through him, but he said nothing, simply nodding in silence. Mason emerged from the bathroom, his back covered in scratch marks. He paused when he saw Daniel, then took Sarah's hand. "Sarah, it's over. Let him go." Sarah's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "He needs money, and I'm paying him for service. It's a fair transaction. There's nothing to let go of." She then turned and wrapped her arms around Mason, her voice softening. "Don't worry. Before the wedding, I'll make sure he disappears for good." For the next several days, wherever Sarah and Mason went, she brought Daniel along. If someone proposed a toast, she made Daniel drink for them, forcing him to down glass after glass until he was stumbling to the bathroom to be sick over and over again. At dinners, she made him wait on Mason like a servant, peeling his shrimp, deboning his fish, and even escorting him to the restroom. All the while, she would dote on Mason in front of everyone, showering him with affection. At the end of each night, she would pull a wad of cash from her purse and throw it at him without a word. "Your pay for the day," she'd say. He never reacted to the humiliation, just silently bent to pick up the scattered bills, carefully tucking them away. He needed the money. As soon as he had enough, he could vanish from her life forever. The mountain committal would leave nothing behind, Not a single bone, not a shred of flesh. It would be as if Daniel Hayes had never existed. On Mason's birthday, Sarah threw him a lavish party. Her affection for Mason was plain for all to see. The entire event was tailored to his tastes. Rumor had it she'd spent a fortune on 1,000,000 roses just to decorate the venue. The suit Mason wore that night had been designed years ago by Sarah's mother for her future son-in-law. They made their entrance arm in arm, immediately capturing everyone's attention. Sarah was as radiant and poised as ever, but the man beside her was no longer Daniel. His mind flashed back to their own engagement party. It had been just as grand, with all their friends and family gathered to witness her devotion to him. They had stood hand in hand, believing they were on the threshold of a happy life together. She had placed her family's heirloom ring on his finger, telling him that now he was hers, and they would never be apart. The murmuring of the crowd pulled him back to the present. "I still don't get what Daniel was thinking," someone whispered. He and Sarah were inseparable, and she absolutely adored him, treated him like a king. And then he goes and kills her mother. I know, right? The whole city knew how crazy she was about him. It makes no sense. If that hadn't happened, they'd probably have kids in grade school by now. Forget it. Who can understand a monster like that? He got what he deserved. Totally. A guy like him should just die. Daniel listened to their curses, his face an emotionless mask, as they wished he would be dead very soon. After the party ended, Sarah was still seeing guests off, so Daniel and Mason waited for her by the lake near the entrance. It was the first time they had been alone since his release. Mason was quiet for a long time before he finally spoke. "Daniel, you know, I've always been in love with Sarah. I loved her even before you two got together. When you were so happy, I stepped aside. I was ready to be happy for you both. But why did you have to betray her? Do you have any idea how much she's suffered all these years? It took me so long to help her heal, and now you show up and throw her into chaos again." Daniel looked at him, stunned. He'd never imagined that his best friend had been secretly in love with Sarah all this time. But his reappearance wasn't meant to disrupt their lives. The man who had killed her mother, a man who was already dying, had nothing left to fight for. "Mason, I'll be gone soon." Mason stared at him, a flicker in his eyes showing he didn't believe a word. Suddenly, Mason pulled the ring from his own finger and hurled it into the lake. "Daniel, you threw my ring in the water. You should be the one to get it back, shouldn't you?" Just as he spoke, Sarah appeared beside them. She grabbed Daniel's arm, her eyes blazing with anger. "Daniel, can't you leave us alone for 1 second? What does the ring I gave Mason have to do with you? Why would you throw it away?" Daniel met her gaze and saw something strange in her furious eyes, a flicker of hope. Was she hoping he'd done it out of jealousy? A bitter taste filled his mouth, but he forced a smirk. "Why would I care about some meaningless ring? To me, it's not worth as much as the cash you throw at me." Sarah's eyes went ice cold. She shoved him violently, sending him splashing into the lake. He cried out in shock, but she had already turned away, not giving him a second glance. "I don't care how you do it, but you're not getting out of there until you find that ring." With that, she took Mason's arm and walked away without a second thought. It was the middle of winter, and a recent snow had left the air bitingly cold. Thin sheets of ice floated on the surface, the sight alone enough to make one shiver. Daniel stood in the bone-chilling water, his body growing numb. The muddy bottom was littered with sharp rocks and broken glass that sliced into the soles of his feet. Biting his lip against the pain, he submerged himself, searching, coming up for air and diving back down, over and over. He searched mechanically all night long, until the water around him was stained red with his own blood. Finally, his fingers closed around the ring at the bottom of the lake. When he appeared before Sarah, battered and exhausted, she just frowned, pulled a wad of cash from her pocket, and threw it on the ground in front of him. As always, he picked up the money and left without a word. For the next few days, Sarah left him alone, which was unusual. Then, one afternoon, he was returning to the Lockwood estate when he saw the entire mansion shrouded in thick, black smoke. A terrible premonition seized him. Sarah was in danger. The thought had barely formed before he was sprinting toward the flames. Sarah valued her privacy, so the staff only came to clean when she wasn't home. He knew she'd been staying in for the past few days, which meant she was the only one inside. He knew the layout of the house by heart and found her unconscious in the bedroom. The fire must have spread fast. She must have taken a sleeping pill, which was why the smoke had overcome her before she could wake up. He struggled to hoist her over his shoulder and began the difficult journey back toward the entrance. The flames were growing, threatening to block their escape route. Just then, a burning support beam from the ceiling came crashing down. Without a second's hesitation, he threw himself over Sarah's body to shield her. The searing heat of the impact on his back was so intense he nearly blacked out. But looking at Sarah's unconscious form, her brow furrowed in her sleep, he felt a surge of determination. He had to get her out, even if it cost him his own life. Fueled by that resolve, he pushed through the pain and miraculously carried her out of the burning house. They collapsed onto the lawn, and he gasped for fresh air, his body a canvas of burns and cuts. Just then, he saw Mason sprinting toward them. With the last of his strength, he pushed Sarah into Mason's arms. When she wakes up, he rasped, "Tell her you were the one who saved her." Mason stared at Daniel's battered form, confused by his request. As Daniel staggered to his feet to leave, Mason called out, asking the question one more time. "Tell me the truth, Daniel. Did you really kill Mrs. Lockwood on purpose?" Daniel swayed, his body tensing at the question. It was a long moment before he answered. "Yes." With that single word, he walked away and didn't look back. In the days that followed, Mason took diligent care of Sarah. Believing he had risked his life for her, she treated him with a devotion that was the envy of everyone, catering to his every whim. Their nights together became more frequent. Daniel, standing guard outside the door, could hear everything, including the sweet, loving words she whispered to Mason. He thought that maybe, finally, Sarah had truly fallen in love with him. And that was for the best. She deserved to find her own happiness, and he was just a shadow, watching her happiness from the darkness. The burns on his back still throbbed with pain, and he had to treat them himself in secret when no one was around. One day, he was in his small room, his shirt off, about to apply ointment to the burns, when the door suddenly swung open. It was Sarah. Her eyes fell on the raw, ugly burns covering his back, and her own eyes immediately reddened. She walked slowly toward him, her voice trembling when she spoke. "Where did you get these burns?" she asked. "The person who saved me from the fire. It was you, wasn't it?" Daniel, shocked by her sudden appearance, jumped to his feet and quickly pulled his shirt back on. Seeing the broken look in her eyes, he was on the verge of telling her everything. But he caught himself. He forced a callous smirk onto his face. "Saved you? What are you talking about?" He gestured to his back. "Oh, these? Got them in a prison fight over some girl. Guys in there are animals. All the women wanted me, and the other guys got jealous. This is what they did." Sarah's face went pale with rage, any trace of pity in her eyes vanishing. She lunged forward and wrapped her hands around his throat, her grip tightening as if she wanted to kill him right there. "Daniel, you're heartless. Were you that bored? Was I not enough for you? What was our relationship to you?" He choked for air, his face turning red, and coughed violently. When she finally released him, he let out a harsh laugh. "What was it? It was you being naive, and me playing along. Sarah, I really did want to marry you, but loving just one person forever is so hard. The others were just for fun. If your mother hadn't walked in on me, forcing my hand, we wouldn't be in this mess." He added with a cruel twist, "Besides, none of them treated me as well as you did, right?" Sarah's face went white with rage. She recoiled as if he were toxic, her voice flat and dead. "Daniel, you disgust me. Ever loving you is the greatest regret of my life." Without another look, she turned and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. Finally alone, he sank weakly to the floor, his back against the bed. This was what he wanted, wasn't it? For her to hate him so completely that she would never think of him again. Then why did his chest ache with such a searing pain, like a raw, salted wound? It would pass, he told himself. After he got dressed, Mason asked him to drive him into town to run some errands. The Lockwoods had a chauffeur, so Daniel didn't understand why Mason wanted him to drive, but he didn't question it. He slid into the driver's seat and turned the ignition. Suddenly, Mason, who had been standing to the side, lunged in front of the car and collapsed on the ground, covered in what looked like blood. Daniel froze. The engine had just started. The car hadn't even moved an inch. There was no way it could have hurt him that badly. So where did all that blood come from? Before he could make sense of it, Sarah was there, rushing to Mason's side. She helped him up, her voice frantic. "Mason, are you all right?" Mason leaned against her weakly, his eyes landing on Daniel with a look of pure anguish. "Sarah, don't blame Daniel," he rasped. "I'm sure it was an accident." As he spoke, he coughed violently, spitting a mouthful of blood onto the pavement. The vivid red seared itself into Sarah's vision. She looked up at Daniel, her face a cold mask, the memory of her mother's death replaying in her mind. In that instant, she snapped, "Daniel, you never change. Who did Mason catch you with this time? Is that why you did this to him?" Gritting her teeth, she helped Mason into the passenger seat and then slid behind the wheel herself. The engine roared to life, and Sarah's eyes became bloodshot. She stared at Daniel, the image of her dying mother merging with the sight of Mason's spitting blood. The memories tangled together, ensnaring her. Her chest tightened as if gripped by an invisible hand, and she could barely breathe. But then the images and the sound of Mason's pained groans flooded her senses again. Her resolve hardened. She slammed her foot on the accelerator and drove straight at Daniel. With a sickening thud and the screech of tires, his body was thrown into the air. For the few seconds he was airborne, his world was a chaotic blur. The moment he hit the pavement, he thought he heard the sound of his own bones shattering. Then, everything went black. He dreamt he was back in time when he and Sarah were still in love. He'd just gotten his license and was nervous behind the wheel, but she was in the passenger seat, patiently guiding him. "Daniel, don't be scared," she had said. "Just go for it. I'm right here with you." But then the dream shifted. She was gone, replaced by the image of her red, furious eyes as she floored the accelerator, aiming right for him. Daniel woke with a start, his forehead and back drenched in sweat. He was in a hospital. His chest ached terribly, and a nurse informed him that he had several broken ribs. Sarah never visited him in the hospital. He hadn't expected her to. He knew how much she hated him now. By the time he was discharged, she was already deep in preparations for her wedding to Mason. She insisted that he be involved in every step of the planning. She wanted him to watch as she married another man. She wanted him to see everything that should have been as being given to someone else. Daniel didn't refuse. He obediently trailed after her and Mason, watching them pick out tuxedos, pose for engagement photos, and select a venue. He had walked this road before, but this time, he was no longer the groom. On the anniversary of Mrs. Lockwood's death, he bought flowers and went to her grave early in the morning. He sat beside the headstone, resting his head against the cool marble and looking at the kind, gentle face in the photograph. "Are you doing okay?" he murmured. "Are you lonely? I remember how you used to say I was like a son to you. You were like a mother to me, too. Don't worry. I'll be joining you soon." Before her death, he and Mrs. Lockwood had been incredibly close. Having lost his own mother young, he had found a maternal warmth in her that he desperately missed. They had been on the verge of becoming a real family. But fate had intervened. A familiar voice pulled him from his thoughts. He looked up to see Sarah and her father, Mr. Lockwood, approaching the grave. The moment Mr. Lockwood saw him, his face contorted with rage. "You bastard! Who told you could be here? How dare you?" He lunged forward, shoving Daniel hard. Still weak from his injuries, Daniel had no strength to resist. The push sent him stumbling backward, and he fell hard against the headstone, splitting his head open. Blood streamed down his face, but he simply pressed a hand to the wound and remained silent. Seeing him injured did nothing to quell Mr. Lockwood's fury. He just unleashed a fresh torrent of curses. "You don't deserve to be here," he roared. "Murderer, you're the one who should be dead. What did the Lockwoods ever do to you? Sarah loved you. My wife treated you like her own son. Why did you have to kill her?" By the end, his voice was choked with sobs. Daniel remained on the ground, his face ashen, saying nothing. Sarah stood beside them, watching him coldly. But knowing she was the one who had broken his ribs, she finally stepped in. "Don't make a scene in my mother's grave," she said, her voice flat. "Go wait in the car." Daniel struggled to his feet and stumbled away. Only then did Mr. Lockwood realize that Sarah had been keeping Daniel with her all this time. His face turned ashen, his brow furrowed with a deep, sorrowful line. "Sarah, be honest with me. Are you still in love with him?" Sarah looked away, unable to meet her father's eyes, her body trembling almost imperceptibly. "No, I stopped loving him a long time ago. All I feel for him now is hatred." For the first time, Mr. Lockwood's imposing figure seemed frail. He looked at his daughter, his white hair and weary eyes making him seem ancient. "You're my daughter. You can't lie to me. Sarah, he's a man who killed your mother. Even if you still love him, you can never be together. How can you love the man who murdered your mother? How could she ever rest in peace knowing that?" His words struck her like a physical blow, leaving her frozen. All this time, she had been telling herself it was only hatred, that keeping him closed was just a form of revenge. But she knew it was a lie she told herself. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "Dad, don't worry. I'll marry Mason as soon as possible. And as for Daniel, I'll make him leave. He'll never appear in front of either of us again." In the final days before the wedding, Sarah stopped tormenting him. Instead, she took him out for a drive, just the two of them. She drove them to the Lovelock Bridge over the Hudson, a place they used to go on dates. She remembered the first time they'd come here. She had twisted her ankle, and he had carried her the rest of the way. Together, they had attached a lock to the railing, a symbol of their promise to be together forever. But now, the person beside her was a stranger. After a long search, Sarah finally found their lock. She took out a pair of bolt cutters from her car, snipped the lock in two, and tossed the pieces into the river below without a word. Next, she drove him to Chapel Rock, a scenic spot upstate, and untied the wishing ribbon they had left there years ago. The words they had written on it were still visible. Sarah and Daniel, together forever. She let it go, and the wind carried it over the edge of the cliff, where it disappeared from sight. They continued on, visiting the beach where they first said, "I love you," and the park where they had planted a small tree together. Daniel understood what she was doing. She was systematically erasing every trace of their love. Just like him, she was determined to cut the other person out of her life completely. After they had visited the last spot, Sarah leaned against the car, chain-smoking several cigarettes in silence. When she was done, she pulled a check from her purse and held it out to Daniel. "This is enough to pay for the bottles you broke at the club. Use the rest to buy a plane ticket and never let me see you again. Go somewhere I'll never find you." His nails dug into his palms, drawing blood. His chest felt so tight he could hardly breathe. After a long, painful silence, he took the check from her hand. "All right." They both looked up, their eyes meeting for a final, brief moment. They spoke at the same time. "Goodbye, Daniel." "Goodbye, Sarah." Sarah lowered her gaze, turned, and walked away without looking back. Daniel watched until her figure disappeared completely. Then he turned and walked in the opposite direction. 3 days before the wedding, Daniel paid the remaining balance for his mountain committal. That same day, the news of Sarah Lockwood and Mason Croft's impending wedding was on the front page of every paper. Their seaside ceremony was the talk of the town, with every major figure in New York society expected to attend. Celebrities took to Twitter to offer their congratulations, and the event dominated the trending topics with over a dozen hashtags. 2 days before the wedding, Daniel booked his flight to Aspen. To celebrate, Sarah sponsored a massive fireworks display over the city. Beneath the dazzling explosions, the city celebrated the happy couple, wishing them a long and joyful life together. The day before the wedding, Daniel packed a small box of his belongings and set it on fire. Inside were all the gifts Sarah had ever given him, the physical remnants of their shared memories, the treasures he had clung to throughout his time in prison. But now, on the brink of death, they were meaningless. The woman he loved was about to marry another man. She would be happy, he thought. They would have children and live a sweet, wonderful life, just as he and Sarah had once planned. The flames danced in front of him, turning the memories of their love into ash. That evening, at dinner, Mason watched Sarah's distracted expression and felt a pang of unease. "Sarah, are you still thinking about Daniel?" She snapped out of her reverie and took his hand, her voice soft. "No, Mason, I'm completely over him. Don't worry. I'm going to love you with all my heart. From now on, you're the most important person in my life." A satisfied smile spread across Mason's face, and he nodded. After dinner, they were heading home to get ready for the next day's wedding. As they were walking out of the restaurant, a heavy chandelier from the ceiling came crashing down, striking Mason directly on the head. Blood poured from the wound, and he collapsed, unconscious. Sarah's face went pale. She cradled Mason in her arms and rushed him to the hospital, where he was taken straight into emergency surgery. The doctor said he was hemorrhaging and needed an immediate transfusion, but the hospital's supply of his rare, Rh-negative blood type was dangerously low. They needed a donor, and fast. Panicked, Sarah ordered her assistant to launch a citywide search for a match. The assistant's frantic search of the donor database yielded only one name: Daniel Hayes. He rushed back to Sarah. "Ms. Lockwood, we found a match. There's only one person in the system." He hesitated. "It's..." Before he could say the name, Sarah cut him off. "I don't care who it is. Save Mason. I don't care what it takes, even if you have to drain every last drop of blood from that person. Do you understand?" The assistant said nothing more and immediately dispatched a team to bring Daniel to the hospital. Daniel was at his apartment, ticket in hand, about to leave for the airport, when several men forced their way in, dragged him to the hospital, and threw him into a donation room. Confused and alarmed, he struggled so fiercely that the nurse couldn't get a needle in and had to call for Sarah's assistant. The assistant arrived, his face a mask of pure disgust. He had worked for Sarah for years and knew the whole sordid history, so he had nothing but contempt for Daniel. "Mr. Hayes, Ms. Lockwood sent us. Mr. Croft has been in an accident and is losing a lot of blood. You're the only match. Ms. Lockwood's orders were to save him at any cost, even if it means draining you dry. The hospital is surrounded. I suggest you stop fighting. Besides, you owe her a life, don't you?" At those words, Daniel went still. His resistance faded. It was true. He owed Sarah a life, and whether he gave blood or not, he was going to die soon anyway. It was just a question of sooner or later. At that thought, he stopped struggling completely. The needle slid into his vein. He watched the bag fill, his life draining out of him, his face growing paler with each passing moment. 400 milliliters, 600, 800, 1,000. As the volume increased, the monitor beside him began to alarm, and his vision started to fade. He closed his eyes, feeling his life ebb away with the flow of his blood. "Sarah," he thought, "this is really goodbye." The alarm on the monitor shrieked, its frantic beeping finally settling into a single, continuous tone. The nurse cried out, pulling the needle from his arm and running into the hall. "He's gone. He's not breathing." The assistant, standing just outside the door, heard her shouts and rushed into the room as if he'd been struck by lightning. His eyes fell on Daniel's ashen face. The once handsome features were now bloodless, like a marble statue. The four was still in his arm, but nothing flowed through it. On the monitor, the flat line was a piercing, terrible sight. "Daniel Hayes is dead," the assistant mumbled, unable to believe it. He had never liked Daniel, had in fact despised him, but now he felt a strange, complex emotion. He knew Daniel had betrayed Sarah, that he was a pariah, but he had also witnessed the depth of MS. Lockwood's feelings for him over the years. He understood better than anyone the torment of her love and hatred, the pain she could never let go of. Now Daniel was dead. How would she react if she knew? His mind reeling, he yelled at the nurse, "Do something. Save him. You have to bring him back." The nurse shook her head grimly. "He's gone. He had cancer, and we took too much blood. There's nothing we can do." "Cancer?" The assistant stared, dumbfounded. He'd had no idea Daniel was sick. How could he have cancer? He was just released from prison. Just then, he heard hurried footsteps approaching. Sarah strode down the hall, her brow furrowed with exhaustion. "Mason's out of surgery, thanks to the donor. Arrange for a generous compensation payment." The assistant's heart plummeted. He glanced from Daniel's body to Sarah, unsure of what to say. Her eyes swept the room, but she didn't seem to register the figure on the bed. "Well," she prompted coolly, "is there a problem?" He gritted his teeth and made a decision. He walked quickly to the bed and pulled the white sheet over Daniel's face. Then he turned back to Sarah. "Ms. Lockwood, the donor didn't make it." Sarah paused, a slight frown creasing her forehead in surprise, but her expression quickly returned to neutral. "He's dead," she said calmly. "Then make sure his family is well compensated." The assistant nodded, a storm of emotions churning inside him. Her reaction was so detached because she thought the donor was a stranger. But it wasn't. It was Daniel, the man she had once loved, the man she had hated for 5 long years. "Ms. Lockwood," he began. The assistant opened his mouth to speak, but Sarah had already turned away. "Mason is waiting for me. Handle this and then come to his room." He stood frozen, watching her walk away until she disappeared around the corner. He looked down at the sheet-covered body of Daniel Hayes, his heart heavy with a complicated grief. He knew Daniel's death cleared the final obstacle for her wedding to Mason. But he also knew her feelings for Daniel ran much deeper and were far more complex than she ever showed. "Daniel," he whispered. A profound sadness washed over him. "Don't blame me," he murmured to the still form. "She's marrying Mr. Croft. She's starting a new life. Dead or alive, you have to be out of it for good." Taking a deep breath, he left the room. He knew he had to take care of the arrangements quickly before Sarah could find out the truth. He called a crematorium to make the arrangements. But just as he was about to hang up, the nurse from before approached him, looking hesitant. "Sir, "There's something you should know," she said quietly. "Mr. Hayes gave me a number before he passed. He said he had arranged for a mountain committal 2 weeks ago and asked if we could make sure his wishes were carried out." The assistant was stunned. A mountain committal? Why would Daniel arrange for that? Did he know 2 weeks ago that he was going to die? He immediately called the number the nurse gave him and confirmed it. Daniel Hayes had indeed arranged for his own committal service 2 weeks ago. A deep unease settled over the assistant. He realized there was more to Daniel's story than he knew, that perhaps he wasn't the villain everyone thought he was. He composed himself and met with the agency coordinator. Learning that the committal was a complex ritual that required a trip to Aspen, he fell into deep thought. It was Daniel's final wish, and if he didn't go himself, he worried the truth of his death might get out. After much deliberation, he decided he had to go. He rushed to the hospital to request time off from Sarah. When he entered the room, Mason was awake and talking with her. "Sarah, when I get out of here, let's try that new sushi place, okay?" Mason asked, his voice hopeful. Sarah smiled gently, stroking his cheek. "Of course, whatever you want." The assistant stood in the doorway, watching them. A complicated feeling stirred within him. He thought of Daniel, lying silent and cold in the morgue, and felt a pang of sadness. "Ms. Lockwood, I need to request a few days off," he said quietly, stepping into the room. She looked up, frowning. "Time off? Now? The wedding is in a few days. We're swamped. This is a terrible time." The assistant lowered his head. "It's a family emergency. I have to go." Sarah's expression darkened. She was clearly not pleased. But then Mason spoke up. "Sarah, we can postpone the wedding. Daniel is gone now, and you're all mine. The wedding is just a formality. I want it to be perfect with no regrets. It's better for a fresh start." Sarah seemed taken aback, as if his words had struck a chord. After a moment of silence, she nodded. "Fine, go take care of your family. Just get back as soon as you can." The assistant let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding and quickly left the hospital. As he left, he glanced back. Sarah and Mason were still close, looking like a couple that nothing could ever tear apart. A bitter thought crossed his mind. Maybe this was for the best. He collected Daniel's body and began the long journey to Aspen. Throughout the journey, images of Daniel filled his mind. The vibrant, spirited man he once was, now reduced to a cold, lifeless body. Upon arriving in Aspen, he followed the instructions for the committal and entrusted Daniel's body to the officiant. Following the ancient ritual, the officiant prepared the body, making it an offering to the eagles and vultures of the mountain. The birds would consume everything, leaving nothing behind. If the body was completely consumed, it was considered a sign of a pure soul, one free of sin, that would ascend to the heavens. The assistant stood at a distance, watching as the birds of prey descended, a storm of complicated feelings churning within him. He never imagined this would be Daniel's end. But what shocked him even more was that the birds left nothing, not a single trace. The officiant watched, then nodded with a tone of reverence. The deceased was a pure soul. He will find peace. The assistant was floored. Apure sol, Daniel had betrayed Ms. Lockwood, killed her mother. His actions were unforgivable in everyone's eyes. How could a man like that be considered pure? A seed of doubt was planted in his mind. Was it possible there was more to the story of Mrs. Lockwood's death? He stood on that mountain cliff, gazing at the distant peaks, his mind in turmoil. He didn't know if he should tell Sarah. She was with Mason now. Their wedding was imminent. Daniel's death shouldn't be allowed to disrupt her new life. "Daniel," he thought, "what were you hiding? Why did you arrange this 2 weeks ago? Did you know you were going to die?" But there was no one to answer his questions. Daniel had left the world, taking his secrets with him. After the committal was complete, everyone departed. The birds were gone, leaving only a few stray feathers and the faint scent of iron on the wind. Daniel's body had been completely consumed, as if he had never been there at all. The officiant's words echoed in the assistant's mind. The deceased was a pure soul. He will find peace. Apure sol? How is that possible? But the officiant's words stuck with him, a persistent thorn in his conscience. He hesitated, wrestling with the idea of looking into what really happened 5 years ago. But just as he was about to make the call, his own phone rang. It was Sarah. "Your leave is up. Are you on your way back?" Her voice was as cold and authoritative as ever. He paused for a second before replying. "Yes, Ms. Lockwood. I'm on my way back now." "Good," she said. "I've decided to postpone the wedding. We'll need to rebook the venue and send out new invitations. I want it to be even bigger this time." The assistant was taken aback. The wedding was postponed? He asked, "Ms. Lockwood, are you sure? Are you postponing it for long?" There was a pause. Then Sarah's voice, laced with impatience. "Mason hasn't fully recovered. It's better for him if we wait. Just get back here and start making the new arrangements." The assistant agreed, but a sense of unease crept over him. Her tone was cold, but he thought he detected something else beneath the surface. Was it possible she was still thinking about Daniel? After hanging up, he looked up at the vast mountain sky and sighed. He knew he had to drop it. There was no reason to keep digging. Daniel was dead, and his secrets were buried with him beneath the mountain peaks. He turned away from the committal site and began his journey home. As soon as he was back in New York, he went straight to the Lockwood estate. Sarah and Mason were in the living room, discussing the new wedding plans. Mason was smiling happily, while Sarah offered an occasional nod in response to his ideas. "You're back," Mason said, greeting him with a smile. "Sarah and I were just going over the details. Any thoughts?" The assistant shook his head respectfully. "Mr. Croft, the decisions are for you and Ms. Lockwood to make. I'm just here to help execute your vision." Mason nodded, pleased, and launched into a list of new demands. "We need a new venue, something on the coast. I love the romantic feel of the ocean, and the tuxedos need to be redesigned. I wasn't happy with the last fitting. We also need to revise the guest list to include some of my friends from Europe." The assistant dutifully took notes, but his mind was wandering. He kept glancing at Sarah. She was sitting right next to Mason, but her eyes were unfocused, her attention clearly elsewhere. "Sarah, what about you? Anything you want to change?" Mason asked, turning to her with a smile. Sarah seemed to snap back to the present. "December 10th, she said quietly. "It's a good date. Let's have the wedding then." Both Mason and the assistant stared at her. December 10th was 3 months away. 3 months. Mason frowned, clearly displeased. "Why so long? We could pick a date much sooner." Sarah looked at him, her voice quiet but unyielding. "It's a good date. It's better for us to get married then. Besides, you need more time to recover. There's no need to rush." Mason didn't look happy, but he forced a smile and didn't argue. He turned to the assistant. "What do you think?" The assistant felt a knot of tension in his stomach. He knew Sarah's decisions were not to be questioned, but he could also see Mason's frustration. He chose his words carefully. "I'm sure Ms. Lockwood has her reasons. I'll make the arrangements as she requested." Mason fell silent, his expression sullen. He changed the subject. "What about the honeymoon? Where should we go? I was thinking the Maldives, or maybe Paris." Sarah shook her head, her voice cool. "Those places are too cliché." Mason grumbled. "Well, where do you want to go then?" Sarah was quiet for a moment before answering. "Aspen." The assistant's heart clenched, and the pen nearly slipped from his fingers. "Aspen? Why did you want to go to Aspen? That's where Daniel had chosen for his committal." Was this some kind of promise they had made to each other? Mason, oblivious to the assistant's reaction, just frowned. "Aspen? What's there to do? It's cold and in the middle of nowhere. I don't want to go." Sarah looked at him, her voice firm. "It's a sacred place. I want you to see it." Mason started to protest, but Sarah had already stood up. "Come with me," she said to the assistant. "There are a few more things." He followed her upstairs, that feeling of unease returning. She gave him a few work-related instructions, but she seemed distracted. Soon she was finished, but she didn't tell him to leave. He stood in her study, the air thick with unspoken tension. She stood with her back to him, facing the large window. A cigarette burned down to her knuckles, though she didn't seem to notice. He understood she wanted to talk about something else. "Ms. Lockwood," he asked cautiously, "is there something else?" She was silent for a long time before she finally spoke, her voice a raw whisper. "How is he?" The assistant's heart sank. He knew she was asking about Daniel. Even without a name, he knew exactly who he was. He lowered his head, his hands trembling slightly, and forced his voice to remain steady. "Ms. Lockwood, you told him to disappear. I assume he's left New York, probably gone overseas." Sarah said nothing, just stood there silently, as if absorbing his words. The air in the room was heavy and oppressive, like the calm before a storm. After what felt like an eternity, she spoke again. "And the donor from a hospital, how was that situation resolved?" The assistant's heart leaped into his throat, the image of Daniel's pale, lifeless face flashing in his mind. He gritted his teeth and forced himself to lie again. "Ms. Lockwood, everything was handled. The family received their compensation. It's all settled." Sarah didn't turn around. She just made a small sound of acknowledgement, as if the matter was of no importance to her. "Is there anything else, Ms. Lockwood?" he asked carefully. After a moment, she waved a dismissive hand. "No, that's all. You can go." The assistant felt a wave of relief as he turned and left the room. As he closed the door, he couldn't resist one last look back. Her tall, slender figure was still silhouetted against the window, looking utterly alone and isolated from the world. Inside the study, Sarah slowly reached into a drawer and pulled out a small, worn ring box. The velvet was faded and the edges were frayed, but the ring inside still shone brightly. It was the engagement ring she had bought for Daniel all those years ago. She opened the box, and the diamond caught the light, sending out a faint sparkle. Her fingers traced the cool metal of the ring, and memories she had long suppressed came flooding back. She was 15 back in high school, during that sweet, uncertain time before they were officially a couple. Daniel always sat in the row in front of her, and she would watch the way his hair moved when he turned his head. She would often find herself staring at the back of his head, lost in thought, until he would suddenly turn around and flash her a playful grin. "Sarah, I'm stuck on this problem. Can you help me out?" he'd ask, sliding his textbook on her desk. She'd glance at the question and see it was one of the easiest in the chapter. She would raise an eyebrow. "You can't solve this? Were you spacing out in class again?" He would grin sheepishly. "You caught me." She would shake her head with a sigh, pick up her pen, and start to explain. As she pointed to the book, her fingers would accidentally brush against his, and they would both freeze. His ears would turn bright red, and he would quickly look down at the book, pretending to be focused, but she could see the tips of his ears were practically glowing. He never seemed to notice that her own heart was pounding in her chest. She knew, even then, that she had fallen for him completely. At 20, she finally confessed her feelings to him under a moonlit sky, and they officially became a couple. It was in college. He was wearing a simple white shirt, standing under a blossoming cherry tree, his smile as bright as the sun. He looked up at the petals drifting down, his eyes full of hope. "Sarah," he asked, turning to her, "do you think we'll always be this happy?" She reached up and ran her fingers through his hair. "Of course," she said sweetly. "We'll be together until we're old and gray." His smile widened, and he leaned in to kiss her cheek. "Then promise me we'll get married in Aspen. I heard that if you get married in a sacred place in the Rockies, your souls will be bound together for all eternity." She smiled and nodded. "Okay, whatever you want." At 22, they moved in together. They shared meals, watched movies, planted a small garden, and spent countless nights wrapped in each other's arms. She remembered one night, he was sitting on the couch, flipping through a bridal magazine. "Sarah, look at this one. What do you think?" he asked, pointing to a picture of a flowing white gown, his eyes shining with excitement. She came and sat beside him, snuggling into his arms. "If you like it, I love it." He rested his head on her shoulder. "We have to get married in Aspen," he said dreamily, "so the mountains themselves can witness our love. And then we'll have 2 kids, a boy and a girl. The boy will look like me, and the girl will look like you." "Okay." She tilted her head and kissed his forehead. "Okay," she whispered. "Whatever you want." He beamed, wrapping his arms around her waist and whispering in her ear, "Sarah, I love you." Her heart fluttered. She held him tighter and whispered back, "I love you too, Daniel." The memories washed over her, and her fingers began to tremble. She remembered the first time they held hands, their first kiss, their first promise of forever. She remembered how much he had needed her, how much he had loved her. So why? Why did he have to betray her? Why did he have to kill her mother and ruin everything? A spasm of pain crossed her face. She snapped the ring box shut and hurled it into the wastebasket. It traced a short arc through the air before landing with a soft thud. She closed her eyes and took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to calm the storm inside her. She knew she couldn't live in the past anymore. Daniel was gone. As her assistant said, he had probably left the country, and she needed to let him go completely. All she had for him now was hate. 3 months, she whispered to herself. "Just give me 3 more months, and I will forget you completely." She turned, walked to her desk, opened her laptop, and threw herself into her work. In the days that followed, Sarah acted as if everything was normal. She and Mason went out to dinner, went shopping, saw movies. She even posted a photo of them on her Facebook with the caption, "The rest of my life with you is all I need." Mason would smile, his arm around her, his eyes shining with happiness. "Sarah, you've been so wonderful to me lately." Sarah would look at him and offer a small smile. "You're going to be my husband. Who else would I be good to?" Mason would beam, leaning his head on her shoulder like the happiest man alive. Seeing this change in his daughter, Mr. Lockwood finally began to relax. He patted her on the shoulder, his voice full of relief. "Sarah, you finally moved on. Mason is a good man. You two will have a wonderful life together." Sarah would just nod, a placid smile on her face. "I know, Dad. Don't worry." Only Sarah knew the truth, knew the torment she was hiding. Every night, when the house was quiet, her thoughts would inevitably drift to Daniel. To his smile, his tears, his gentleness, and his betrayal. The memories were like a knife twisting in her heart, the pain sharp and relentless. Then one day, an invitation arrived in the mail for a high school reunion. Sarah stood by the window, holding the invitation, a slight frown on her face. She had no intention of going. She had locked away those memories of her youth and had no desire to unlock them. But Mason came over, his voice full of excitement. "Sarah, we haven't seen any of our old classmates in ages. Let's go. It'll be fun." She looked up and saw the eager anticipation in his eyes. After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. "All right, let's go." The reunion was held in a private dining room at an upscale restaurant. When Sarah and Mason arrived, the room was already crowded and noisy. As they entered, their old classmates stood to greet them, their faces wreathed in smiles. "Sarah, Mason, you made it. You two look amazing together, a perfect match," the former class president gushed. Mason beamed, draping his arm around Sarah's shoulders, looking for all the world like the luckiest man alive. Sarah simply nodded, her expression unreadable. The party quickly got into full swing, with people drinking and laughing as they reminisced about their high school days. Sarah sat in a corner, a glass of red wine in her hand, untouched. "Hey, prom queen, you're awfully quiet," the class president said, sliding into the chair next to her. "Cat got your tongue?" Sarah offered a faint smile. "No, I'm just enjoying listening to everyone." He laughed, then pulled a stack of old envelopes from his bag. "Hey, everyone, remember these? The letters we wrote to ourselves 10 years ago? Well, it's been 10 years. Let's see who actually followed their dreams." The room filled with excited chatter as everyone crowded around, eager to read their youthful proclamations. Mason eagerly joined the crowd and snatched Sarah's letter from the pile. "Let's see what you wrote, Sarah," he said, laughing as he tore open the envelope. His smile froze. The page was covered in writing, and every single line, every word was about Daniel. "To the Sarah of the future," it began. "If you're reading this, I hope you still remember Daniel Hayes. The boy with the sunny smile, the boy you swore you'd always protect, the boy you love more than anything. Are you married now? If you are, did you have the wedding in Aspen? He always said he wanted to get married in that sacred place in the Rockies, so the mountains themselves could witness your love. Do you have children yet? He always said he wanted two, a boy and a girl. A boy who looks like him, and a girl who looks like you. I bet they're beautiful. If for some reason you've forgotten him, please remember him, because he is the person you love most in this world." Mason's hand was shaking, his face a mask of fury and hurt. He looked up at Sarah, his voice trembling. "Sarah." Sarah's eyes fell on the letter, a flicker of some unreadable emotion in their depths. She took the paper from his hand. "That was a long time ago," she said flatly. Then she tore the letter into tiny pieces and dropped them into a nearby trash can. The mood in the room turned instantly awkward. People exchanged uncomfortable glances, unsure what to say. The class president quickly jumped in, forcing a laugh. "Hey, that was ancient history. Sarah has obviously moved on. A guy like Daniel, after what he did, isn't worth remembering anyway." Others quickly agreed. "Totally. Sarah is so happy with Mason now. Let bygones be bygones." Mason's expression was still dark, but he managed a weak smile and said nothing. Sarah remained impassive, as if none of it had anything to do with her. After the reunion, as Sarah and Mason were leaving, one of their old classmates caught up to them at the door. "Sarah, wait up," he said, panting. "There's something I need to tell you." Sarah stopped and gave him a questioning look. "What is it?" The classmate hesitated. "Mason, could you give us a minute? I need to talk to Sarah alone." Mason was surprised, but figured it was probably a business matter, since they were in the same industry, so he didn't press the issue. The classmate waited until Mason was out of earshot before speaking in a low voice. "Sarah, a few weeks ago, my company was in some financial trouble, and I came to your house to ask for help. When I got there, the whole place was on fire. I was about to run in, but then I saw Daniel carrying you out of the flames. Sarah's pupils contracted, and her fists clenched at her sides. Then Mason showed up, the classmate continued, and Daniel handed you over to him, telling him to take the credit. I thought it was weird. If Daniel is as evil as everyone says, why would he save you? And why would he let someone else get the praise for it? The memory of that night flooded her mind. She remembered waking up with Mason by her bedside, his face etched with worry. He had told her he was the one who had braved the flames to save her, and she had never questioned it. Are you sure it was Daniel who saved me? She asked, her voice hoarse. The classmate nodded firmly. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. There's no mistake. Sarah's heart plummeted. She pictured Daniel's pale face, the burns on his back, his cold, callous words when she'd confronted him. It all clicked into place. Why would he do that? She whispered, as if asking herself, or perhaps asking the man who was no longer there. The classmate shook his head. I don't know, but it made me think that maybe Daniel isn't the monster everyone makes him out to be. Sarah, what's wrong? What did he say to you? Mason's voice cut through her thoughts, and she realized her classmate had already left. She snapped back to the present. It's nothing. Let's go home. Mason nodded, putting his arm around her, his cheerful smile returning. But Sarah's mind was racing, her heart in turmoil. Back home, she stood alone by the window, staring out into the night sky. She held a glass of wine, but she didn't drink. Her classmate's words echoed in her mind, along with the image of Daniel's pale, haunted face. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath to still the storm inside her, but the memory she had tried so hard to bury came rushing back, threatening to drown her. Later that night, she sat alone in her study, holding a yellowed envelope. It was Daniel's letter to his future self. She had slipped it into her purse at the reunion when no one was looking. The edges of the envelope were soft and worn with age. Her fingers trembled as she carefully opened it and unfolded the letter inside. The handwriting was his, neat and familiar, every letter a fresh pang in her heart. She took a deep breath and began to read. To the Sarah of the future, if you're reading this, I hope you still remember Daniel Hayes, the boy who was always smiling, the one you swore you'd love forever. Are we still together? If we are you still taking care of me, quietly making sure everything is perfect the way you always did? Remember I said I wanted to take you to Aspen to get married, so the mountains themselves could witness our love? Have we done that yet? Is the sky there as clear and pure as they say? Have we made our vows beneath the peaks, promising to be together for all time? Do we have kids? I remember we talked about having 2, a boy and a girl. A boy who looks like me, and a girl who looks like you. I bet they're adorable. Can they say mom and dad yet? Do you read to them every night and play with them in the yard? Do you love them as much as you love me? Is our home happy? I remember I promised to buy us a house with a big garden, so I could plant all your favorite flowers. Do we have coffee in the garden every morning while we watch the kids play on grass? Do we cook dinner together at night and then curl up on the couch to watch TV? Sarah, if you're reading this, please always remember that I love you more than anyone else in this world. Even if we're not young anymore, even if life has become ordinary, I hope you'll always remember how much we loved each other and how happy we were. Sarah went on with her life as usual, but her assistant saw the change. Her eyes grew vacant, her movements robotic, as if she were a ghost haunting her own life. MS. Lockwood. He ventured one day. You don't seem to be yourself. Would you like me to make an appointment with a doctor for you? She shot him a cold glare. I'm fine, she said, her voice sharp with irritation. I don't need anything. He opened his mouth to protest, but she had already turned her back on him and walked away. As the wedding preparations intensified, Sarah grew quieter and more withdrawn. Then, one night a week before the wedding, she got completely drunk. She was sitting alone in the corner of a dark bar, staring into a glass of whiskey, when a man in a blazer sat down beside her. He smelled faintly of cologne, and he reached out to gently touch her cheek. Sarah, why are you drinking so much all by yourself? His voice was soft and familiar. She looked up, and through her drunken haze, she thought she saw the face she longed for every day. Her heart leaped. She grabbed him, pulled him close, and kissed him with a desperate hunger. The kiss was wild and feverish, filled with all her pain and longing. Her fingers dug into his back, holding him tight as if she was afraid he would vanish. Then she whispered his name, Daniel. The man in her arms went rigid, then shoved her away. Sarah stared, her vision slowly clearing. It was Mason. His eyes were filled with tears, and his voice shook. Sarah, whose name did you just say? The alcohol's haze vanished instantly. She frowned, her voice sharp with irritation. Why are you dressed like him? We talked about this. I told you I wasn't ready. Mason's tears finally broke free. Not ready? Sarah, I'm your fiancé, but you never let me touch you. All those nights, it was all an act for Daniel's benefit. You never even let me get close. We're getting married in a week. Are you planning on never sleeping with me? Sarah's head was pounding. She rubbed her temples. We both just need to calm down. She turned and walked out of the bar, getting into her car and driving away alone. She lit a cigarette, inhaling deeply, trying to quell the rising panic inside her. But the memories she fought so hard to suppress came rushing back, threatening to drown her. She remembered their first time together. She was lying beneath Daniel, her face flushed, her eyes filled with nothing but trust and love. Sarah, will you love me forever? He had asked. She had tilted her head up to kiss his forehead. Of course, she'd whispered. I'll love you until the day I die. Her body had trembled with a mixture of nerves and excitement. Daniel had been so gentle, so slow, as if he were afraid of hurting her. Her fingers had traced the lines of his back, feeling the warmth of his skin, the steady beat of his heart. Her breath had quickened, her vision blurring with desire. Daniel, that feels so good, she had murmured, her voice a trembling whisper. He had silenced her with a kiss, his rhythm quickening, their breaths mingling as they moved together, trying to become one. Her fingers had dug into his back, holding on tight, as if she was afraid he might disappear. In that moment, her heart had been overflowing with a profound sense of peace and happiness. She knew then that she could never let him go. In the car, Sarah's hands gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. Her body responded to the memory, her mind filled with nothing but Daniel. His smile, his tears, his gentleness, his betrayal. It all came rushing back. She closed her eyes, her hands slowly drifting down between her legs. All the feelings she had suppressed for so long came pouring out. Her breath came in ragged gasps, sweat beading on her forehead, until finally, a shuddering release left her limp in the driver's seat, completely spent. In that moment of release, she knew she was lost. She couldn't lie to herself anymore. No matter how much she hated him, no matter how hard she tried to forget, her heart would never be free of Daniel. He was the man who had killed her mother, the one person she could never forgive. But he was also the love of her life. By the time the sun came up, she had smoked an entire pack of cigarettes, the car's ashtray overflowing. She had made a decision. She started the car and drove to the cemetery. A torrential downpour began, the rain hammering against the ground. The cemetery was deserted, except for Sarah, who knelt motionless before her mother's grave. Rain streamed down her hair and face, soaking her to the bone, but she didn't seem to notice. Her eyes were fixed on the photograph on the headstone, on her mother's kind, gentle face, which now felt like a crushing weight upon her. Her fists were clenched so tight her nails drew blood, the crimson mixing with the rain on the ground. Mom, she rasped, her voice a raw, broken thing. I'm so sorry. Her words were lost in the downpour. Her mind was filled with images of Daniel, each memory a fresh twist of the knife in her heart, the pain so sharp it was hard to breathe. She knew it was a betrayal to her mother to be thinking of him now. He was the man who had killed her mother, the one person she could never forgive. So why couldn't she stop thinking about him? Why, despite all the hatred, could she not let him go? Mom, I tried, she sobbed, her voice trembling. I really tried, but I can't let him go. Water streamed down her face. It was impossible to tell where the rain ended and the tears began. Her body shook with the force of her grief. She knew she was betraying her mother, her family, but she couldn't live the lie any longer. For 3 days and 3 nights, she knelt before her mother's grave, refusing all food and water, completely motionless. The groundskeepers tried to get her to leave, but she silenced them with a single, cold glare and a one-word command: leave. They didn't dare approach her again, just watch from a distance with a mixture of awe and concern. On the 3rd day, the rain finally stopped. Sarah slowly, painfully got to her feet. Her knees were numb, but she didn't seem to notice. She gave the headstone one last look. Mom, I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm afraid I have to disappoint you. With that, she turned and walked away, her figure solitary and resolute. The first thing she did when she got home was call off the wedding. Both her father and Mason were stunned. What did you say? Mr. Lockwood's voice was incredulous. Call off the wedding? Sarah, do you have any idea what you're saying? Her face was a blank mask, her voice cold and steady. I said, the wedding is off. Mason's face went white. He grabbed her arm, his voice pleading. Sarah, why? What did I do wrong? I promise, I'll never touch you again without your permission. Just please don't do this. She looked at him, a flicker of guilt in her eyes. It's not about that. Tears streamed down Mason's face. It's Daniel, isn't it? He choked out. You're still not over him. Sarah was silent for a long moment. Then, she nodded. Yes. Mr. Lockwood's face turned purple with rage. He slammed his fist on the table. Sarah, have you forgotten he murdered your mother? How can you still think about that man? Sarah's fists clenched, her nails digging into her palms. Her voice was low and hoarse. I haven't forgotten. That's why I knelt at her grave for 3 days. I tried, Dad. I really tried. But I can't let him go. Her father, shaking with fury, grabbed her riding crop from the wall and brought it down hard across her back. You ungrateful child. I'll beat this foolishness out of you. The crop fell again and again, tearing through her shirt and leaving bleeding welts on her skin. But she didn't flinch, didn't make a sound. Will you let him go? Her father screamed, his voice cracking with hysteria. A trickle of blood appeared at the corner of her mouth, but her voice was steady. I can't. Will you let him go? The crop fell again. Her body trembled, but her voice was calm. I can't. Will you let him go? He struck her again. Her legs finally gave out, and she crumpled to the floor. Her back was a raw, bloody mess, the blood pooling on the expensive rug beneath her. But she lifted her head, her eyes meeting his with a terrifying resolve. I'm going to find him, and I will chain myself to him if I have to. We can go to hell together in the next life, but in this one, I will die without him. Her father's hand trembled, and the crop slipped from his fingers, clattering to the floor. He swayed on his feet, seeming to age a decade in an instant. What have I done? He whispered in a despairing voice. Then his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. Dad! Sarah scrambled to her feet, ignoring the searing pain in her back, and rushed to his side. Call 911, she screamed. Mason stood frozen, his face a ghostly white. He watched her, his eyes filled with a bottomless despair. He knew, with a terrible certainty, that he had lost her forever. The ambulance arrived and rushed Mr. Lockwood to the hospital. The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and fear. Sarah stood outside her father's room, watching his pale, sleeping form through the window in the door. Her fists were clenched so tightly that her nails broke the skin, but she didn't seem to notice the blood dripping from her palms. Mr. Lockwood's eyes fluttered open. He looked at Sarah, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and profound disappointment. His voice was a weak rasp. Sarah, if you insist on going after him, I will remove you as CEO of Lockwood Industries. I will find another heir. You will no longer be a part of this family. Sarah's fists tightened, her knuckles turning white. Her gaze was steady, her voice calm and resolute. Then I will give it all up. Sarah, do you hear yourself? You are the Lockwood heir, the CEO of a multinational corporation. You would throw all of that away for him. Dad, I know you're disappointed. I know you hate him, but I can't let him go. He's the only person I've ever truly loved. Even after everything, he's still the only one who has my heart. I can give up the company, I can give up everything, but I can't give up on him. I know we're both damned, but I'll go to hell with him. A look of shock, then profound disappointment, crossed her father's face. He closed his eyes, unable to look at her any longer. Go, he whispered. Get out of my sight. Sarah turned and walked out of the room without another word. Her back was straight, her stride determined. She was ready to face whatever came next. As she was leaving the hospital, she ran into Mason. He looked pale and exhausted, his eyes hollow with pain. They looked at each other for a moment, and then Mason let out a bitter laugh. Sarah, after all these years, I still lost to him. Mason, I'm sorry. It's over. Tears streamed down his face. Actually, he said, his voice shaking, I set him up so many times. I made him think you were with me, that you hated him. I did everything I could to make you give up on him. I never realized that every time you hurt him, you were hurting yourself even more. Sarah's pupils dilated, her fists clenching so hard her nails drew blood. What did you just say? She whispered. I'm letting you go, Sarah, he sobbed. Go find him. You don't need to apologize. This is my punishment for wanting something that was never mine. And when you find him, tell him I'm sorry. I was so obsessed with you I couldn't see straight. I set him up over and over again. Living the rest of my life without you. That's my penance. Sarah's fists tightened, her knuckles turning white. Her eyes were like chips of ice. Mason, you... But she didn't finish. She just turned and walked away. They were all villains. She was Daniel was. What right did she have to judge Mason? As she walked away, he shouted after her, his voice thick with tears. Sarah, I'll take care of your father. You and Daniel, you have to be happy. Sarah didn't look back. She walked out of the hospital and into the sunlight, a strange sense of liberation washing over her. She pulled out her phone and called her assistant. Find Daniel. I don't care what it takes. Find him now. The assistant's voice on the other end of the line was shaking. Ms. Lockwood, why are you looking for him? She frowned, her patience wearing thin. Just do it. There was a long pause, and then the assistant's voice, small and hesitant. Ms. Lockwood, I'm sorry. Daniel is dead. Sarah's heart seized in her chest, the air driven from her lungs. What did you say? She whispered, her voice a raw croak. The assistant's voice was shaking. The donor, the one who died. It was him. We took too much blood. He died right there in the hospital. I was afraid to tell you. Her hand trembled so violently the phone slipped from her grasp. She staggered, the world tilting on its axis. His words echoed in her head, each one a fresh stab to her heart. That's not possible, she choked out. It's not possible. A coppery taste filled her mouth, and she coughed, a spray of blood hitting the glass of the hospital entrance. The world spun, and she collapsed. When she woke, the world was a sterile, blinding white. The air smelled of antiseptic, and a monitor beeped steadily beside her. Her head was foggy, and a heavy weight seemed to be pressing on her chest, making it hard to breathe. Her assistant was sitting by the bed, his eyes red-rimmed, clutching a folder. When he saw her eyes open, he leaned forward. Ms. Lockwood, you're awake. Her vision was blurry. What happened? She asked. He looked down, his voice thick with emotion. You collapsed. The doctors have been working on you for over a day. We almost lost you several times. Her brow furrowed as fragments of memory returned. The phone call, the news of Daniel's death. Her heart seized. Daniel, she whispered, her voice weak but desperate. Is he really dead? The assistant swallowed hard and nodded. Yes, Ms. Lockwood. He had cancer. It was terminal, and he gave all his remaining blood to save Mr. Croft. His final wish was for a mountain committal, so that's where I went when I was on leave. I took him to Aspen. The officiant there said he was a pure soul. A pure soul. Sarah's voice was a barely audible rasp. Her hands twisted in the sheets, her knuckles white. Seeing her anguish, the assistant's eyes welled up. He pulled a folder from his bag and handed it to her, his own hand shaking. Ms. Lockwood, my conscience got the better of me. I did some digging into what happened 5 years ago. This is the truth. Her fingers trembling, Sarah took the folder and opened it. As she read, the color drained from her face, her eyes wide with a horrified disbelief. The report detailed the truth of that night. Her mother's depressive episode, her confusion, the bodyguard, and Daniel taking the fall to protect the Lockwood family's name, even letting her be the one to send him to prison. He did it for me, she whispered, her voice cracking. She clutched the papers, her knuckles white. A sharp, stabbing pain erupted in her chest, and she coughed, blood spattering the clean white sheets. Her body went limp, and her vision faded to black. Ms. Lockwood! Ms. Lockwood! Doctors and nurses rushed into the room as alarms began to blare. As Sarah's consciousness faded, she thought she could hear Daniel's voice. She remembered the times he had looked at her, as if he wanted to say something, the forced smiles, the unnatural pallor of his skin she had so often ignored. Her heart felt like it was being crushed, the pain stealing her breath. Outside the ICU, Mr. Lockwood and Mason arrived in a hurry. I thought she went to find him, Mr. Lockwood said, his voice sharp with irritation. How did this happen? That man is nothing but trouble. Mason stood beside him, pale and anxious. He was about to speak when the assistant stood up, his voice cold with fury. Mr. Hayes is dead. He died saving Mr. Croft's life. The words hit Mason like a physical blow. He staggered, his face draining of all color. What? He died saving me? Mr. Lockwood just sneered. Serves him right. He should have died years ago. The assistant's fists clenched. He took a deep breath, then handed the other copy of the report to Mr. Lockwood. You've all been wrong about him. This is the truth. Mr. Lockwood took the folder, a confused look on his face. As he read, his expression shifted from confusion to horror. This can't be, he whispered, his hand shaking. It's not possible. Mason leaned over his shoulder to read, and he too went pale, stumbling back as if he might fall. Inside the ICU, Sarah drifted in and out of consciousness. Her mind was filled with images of Daniel, smiling in the sun, cuddling with her on the couch, and staring at her through the visitor's glass at the prison, his eyes empty and hopeless. Daniel, she whispered, tears streaming down her face and soaking the pillow. She couldn't accept that he was gone, that her years of hatred had been built on a lie. He had been protecting her all along, loving her in the only way he could, and she had destroyed him for it. For another day and night, she hovered on the brink of death, but the doctors fought to bring her back. When she finally woke, her assistant was the only one in the room. His eyes were red. "Ms. Lockwood, you pulled through." She stared out the window. The sun was shining, but it couldn't penetrate the gloom in her heart. "Book me a flight to Aspen," she said, her voice weak but resolute. He looked down, his voice breaking. "Ms. Lockwood, his committal is already done." The officiant said his soul was pure, that he would find peace. "You're still too weak to travel. There's no point in going now." A spasm of pain crossed her face. She closed her eyes, tears slipping from beneath her lashes, but her voice was unyielding. "Book the flight." A day later, she was standing in the study of a Lockwood mansion. The sun streamed through the window, but she felt no warmth. Her father sat behind his desk, his face pale, his hands shaking. "Sarah, I know you're hurting, but he's gone. Nothing you do can bring him back." She stared out the window, her voice quiet but firm. "I'm going to Aspen." Her father's face creased with worry. "Sarah, the altitude, the cold, you're not well enough to go. If Daniel knew you were doing this to yourself, he wouldn't be able to rest in peace." She didn't turn around. "I'm going to Aspen," she repeated, her voice flat. Her father's fist clenched, his voice breaking. "Sarah, I know you're suffering, but you can't throw your life away for him." She finally turned to face him, her eyes like ice. "I'm going to Aspen." Her expression silenced him. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The air in the room was thick with a suffocating grief. The door opened, and Mason stepped inside. He was pale, his eyes hollow with exhaustion and pain. He looked from Sarah to her father. "Mr. Lockwood," he said quietly but firmly, "let her go." Her father stared at him, confused. "Mason, not you too." Mason looked down, his voice thick with emotion. "I know Daniel's death has hit her hard. She needs time to process it. If you don't let her go, she'll never find peace." Mr. Lockwood's expression shifted through a range of emotions before he finally sighed in defeat. "Fine, do what you want. I'll wash my hands of it." Mason walked over to Sarah, his eyes a swirling mix of guilt and sorrow. "Sarah, when you see him, tell him I'm sorry. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for what I did." Sarah's expression didn't change. She looked right through him, then turned and walked out of the room. A few days later, Sarah left for Aspen. Her assistant, unable to let her go alone, went with her. On the plane, she was unervingly calm, staring out the window at the clouds, her eyes completely vacant. As soon as they landed, she went straight to the site of Daniel's committal. The site was on a remote, windswept cliff surrounded by snow-capped peaks. The air was thin and solemn. Sarah stood at the edge, staring at the ground. "Tell me what it was like," she said, her voice low. The assistant hesitated. "Ms. Lockwood, are you sure you want to know?" Her eyes remained fixed on the cliff's edge. "Tell me." He took a deep breath. The officiant prepared his body according to the ritual. The birds came quickly. They left nothing behind. It was fast and clean. The officiant said his soul was pure, that he would find peace. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Sarah's lips. Her voice was a whisper on the wind. So he really left nothing of himself behind. The assistant's stomach clenched with a sudden, terrible premonition. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. For the next few days, Sarah was eerily calm, acting like a tourist as she visited scenic spots and took in the mountain views. She stood at the base of a towering peak, her gaze empty as she stared at its summit. She visited a quiet chapel, looking at the serene figures, but she never knelt to pray. The assistant followed her, and his anxiety began to subside, thinking that perhaps she had just come to see the place for herself, to find closure. But on the third night, as she stood on their hotel balcony gazing at the distant peaks, he heard her whisper, "Daniel, wait for me." The assistant, standing just inside the room, heard her. His heart seized in his chest. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The night wind was cold. In the moonlight, Sarah's silhouette looked fragile and solitary, as if she might simply dissolve into the darkness. His unease returned, stronger than before. Her calm over the past few days now seemed terrifying, like the dead quiet before a hurricane. Mr. Lockwood called repeatedly, his voice strained with anxiety. "There's too much to handle at the office. When are you two coming back? Sarah isn't well enough to be there. You can't stay any longer." The assistant stood in the hotel hallway, phone in hand, staring at Sarah's closed door with a knot of dread in his stomach. He took a deep breath and knocked. "Come in," Sarah's voice called, calm and distant. The assistant opened the door to find her sitting by the window, a cup of tea in her hands, staring out at the mountains. Her silhouette against the morning light seemed utterly alone, completely detached from the world. "Ms. Lockwood," the assistant began cautiously, "work is piling up. I think perhaps we should head back." Without turning, she replied in a voice so calm it was unsettling, "We'll go back tomorrow." He was surprised by her quick agreement. A little of his worry subsided. "Of course, I'll make the arrangements." That evening, Sarah left the hotel by herself. The assistant offered to accompany her, but she gently refused. "I'd like to walk alone." He stood at the entrance, watching her figure recede into the twilight, and the feeling of dread returned with a vengeance. He shook his head, trying to reassure himself. She had promised to go home tomorrow. Surely nothing would happen. Sarah walked slowly through the town's main street, the setting sun casting her shadow long behind her. The street was lined with rustic mountain lodges, and the air smelled of pine and wood smoke. From a nearby stable, she heard the clatter of hooves. A little girl was riding a pony, trotting unsteadily in her direction. Suddenly, the pony shied, rearing up. The girl cried out as she lost her balance and began to fall. Acting on pure instinct, Sarah lunged forward and caught the child, tumbling with her to the ground. The little girl was pale, tears brimming in her eyes. Sarah ignored the pain from her fall and helped the child up. "Are you all right?" The girl shook her head, her voice choked with tears. "Thank you. Why did you do that?" Sarah paused, looking at the girl's face. There was something in her eyes that reminded her of Daniel as a boy. Her expression softened. "Because you remind me of someone I love." The girl blinked curiously. "Are you here to get married?" "Lots of people come to Aspen to get married." A small smile touched Sarah's lips. She didn't deny it. "Yes, we are." The girl beamed. "Well, I hope you'll be very happy." A gentle light flickered in Sarah's eyes. "We will be." The next morning, the assistant knocked on Sarah's door, but there was no answer. When he let himself in, the room was empty. His heart sank. He ran from the hotel, searching frantically, and finally found her near the committal site. She was standing at the edge of the cliff, looking out at the mountains, her expression terrifyingly serene. He rushed to her side. "Ms. Lockwood, it's time to go." She turned to him, her gaze distant. "Why don't you go pick up some souvenirs? I'll be along in a minute." He hesitated, but finally nodded. "All right, please don't be long." After he left, Sarah's gaze returned to the cliff's edge. She took a folded note from her pocket, placed it on a rock, and then swallowed the contents of a small vial before slowly closing her eyes. When the assistant returned, a small crowd had gathered at the site. His heart stopped. He pushed his way through and saw her lying on the ground, still and cold. Clutched in her hand was the note. It read, the same committal as his. "We finally got married." A celebration in its own way. The world went dark for a moment, and he stumbled. He picked up the note, his hands shaking, tears blurring his vision. High above, the eagles circled, as if waiting to welcome a new spirit to the mountain. The next day, the assistant knelt beside her body, his fingers gently tracing her cold cheek. "Ms. Lockwood," he whispered, his voice raw. "You and Mr. Hayes are finally together." He looked up at the officiant, his voice firm. "Please perform the committal for her." It was her final wish. The officiant nodded, his expression solemn. The assistant stood and watched as the ancient ritual was performed once more, as her body was offered to the mountain and its creatures. The process was quick and it was clean. Tears streamed silently down the assistant's face. He looked out at the distant peaks and could almost see them, Sarah and Daniel, standing together, smiling faintly, finally at peace. "Ms. Lockwood, Mr. Hayes," he whispered, his voice carried away by the wind, full of both sorrow and relief. "You're finally together forever." High above, the eagles soared on the wind, a final, silent farewell to the lovers below.